So how does a man that pretty much everyone considered an underqualified compromise candidate end up becoming the absolute ruler of Iran for, what, over 3 decades? I mean, he's literally shaped the entire Middle East. It's an incredible story. So let's unravel the improbable rise of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. All right, to really get a grip on Khamenei's Iran, you have to go back to the summer of 1981. It was absolute chaos. The new Islamic Republic was literally tearing itself apart. Just look at this timeline. In just a little over 3 months, you've got a president who gets impeached and has to flee the country. His successor? Assassinated, blown up in his own office. And right smack in the middle of all that, Khamenei himself survives an assassination attempt. It's out of this brutal chaos that a path somehow was cleared for him. Okay, let's really zoom in on that moment. June 27th. Khamenei is at the Abu Zar Mosque. A man, supposedly a supporter, comes up to him with a gift, a tape recorder. He puts it right there on the lectern, right in front of him, and just a minute later, it explodes. The bomb planted by the Forkin group was devastating. It permanently paralyzed his right arm and just shredded his vocal cords. Actually, that's why his voice is often so soft, so quiet. He survived, yeah, but you have to imagine, an experience like that changes you forever.
So who was the man who survived that attack? To get that, we need to rewind a bit. Before all this, Khamenei was a totally devoted student of Ayatollah Khomeini, the main architect of the Iranian Revolution. His entire worldview, everything he believed in, was forged in that struggle against the ruler of Iran at the time, the Shah.
You're really looking at a battle for the soul of a nation here. On one side, you have the Shah's Iran. This is the world Khamenei grew up fighting against. It was secular, pro-Western, pushing all this modernization. But it was also super authoritarian, with a notoriously brutal secret police called Savak. Then, on the other side, you have his mentor, Khomeini, and his vision was, it was the complete opposite. A theocratic state, run by clerics, based on Islamic law, and totally, fiercely anti-Western.
And the whole system they built is based on this one absolutely crucial concept, velayat-e faqih. It's a pretty revolutionary idea, actually. It says no to the old monarchy and no to Western-style democracy. Instead, it argues that the single most qualified Islamic jurist, the supreme leader, should have the final say on everything. That's it. That's the ideological foundation for Khamenei's power.
And look, Khamenei wasn't shy about his beliefs, even way before the revolution. Back in 1967, he wrote this in a book's foreword: "The future belongs to Islam." Simple, right? But incredibly powerful. And you can bet a stance like that put him on a collision course with the Shah's government. He was arrested multiple times, spent long stretches in solitary confinement. This was the core belief system he would eventually carry into power.
Okay, let's fast forward to 1989. This is a huge moment. Ayatollah Khomeini dies. And suddenly, there's this massive power vacuum. The new Islamic Republic is facing its first real leadership crisis. And what happens next? Well, it sets the stage for one of the most unlikely promotions you'll find in modern history.
Now, here's the really crucial part. Khamenei was not the obvious choice. Not by a long shot. A lot of the senior clerics thought he was seriously underqualified. I mean, he hadn't even finished his top-level religious training in Qum. But in all the backroom political maneuvering, he turned out to be the perfect compromise candidate. Guys like Hashemi Rafsanjani pushed for him, probably thinking, hey, this guy will be weak, we can control him. Then this claim, totally unproven by the way, surfaces that Khomeini himself had wanted him as successor. That was enough. It sealed the deal. Just like that, he was in. So how on earth did this unlikely leader manage to hold on to power? Well, the first pillar of his rule was establishing absolute control at home. And to do that, he massively expanded the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. You gotta understand, this isn't just a regular army. It became his army, a personal, ideological force, with commanders he handpicked to make sure they were loyal to him and him alone. Their job? Crush dissent at home, and through their elite Quds force, export the revolution abroad. And whenever there was a challenge, he used the same exact playbook. Every single time, you had the student protests in '99, the huge Green Movement in 2009, even the Arab Spring-inspired protests in 2011. The response, coming right from the top, was always the same 4 steps. 1. Mass arrests. 2. Cut off the internet to stop people from organizing. 3. Use overwhelming, brutal force to crush the protests. And 4. Create the morality police to control every aspect of social life. It's a formula, and he stuck to it. Okay, but clamping down at home was only half the battle. The second pillar of his rule, and this is just as important, was projecting Iran's power outside its borders. The goal was to build this whole network of allied groups, of proxies, across the Middle East who could fight his battles for him. And you can't separate the two. His foreign policy is completely tied to his control at home. So you might be asking yourself, how does this actually work, right? How can a country that's been under crushing sanctions for decades project so much power and challenge global superpowers? Well, the whole secret is in that proxy network. Let's start with the crown jewel of this whole network, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran has been nurturing this group since the 80s, and they've turned it into an incredibly powerful military and political force. We're talking more than just a proxy here. It's practically a state within a state. And for Iran, this gives them a huge deterrent and a permanent base of operations right on Israel's northern border.
Then you've got Hamas. Now, what's so fascinating about this one is that Hamas is a Sunni group. That's a different branch of Islam. But for Khamenei, politics is more important than theology. It's a classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Iran gives Hamas all this crucial support because they act as a constant thorn in the side of their number one enemy, Israel.
And rounding out the big three, you have the Houthis in Yemen. By backing this Shia group, Iran did two things. First, it turned Yemen's horrible civil war into a direct proxy fight with its main rival in the region, Saudi Arabia. But even more important, it gave Iran leverage over the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Think of it as a strategic choke point for all the global shipping that goes through the Red Sea. We're talking about a major artery of the world economy.
So all of this brings us to today. What are the consequences of this decades-long rule? After all that work building this empire of influence, what's the actual legacy of the Khamenei doctrine? Well, it's a really deep and frankly painful contradiction. Iran is a major regional power, but for its people, there's been crushing hardship at home.
I mean, just look at this table. It tells you everything you need to know. On paper, Iran should be a wealthy nation. It's sitting on some of the biggest oil and gas reserves in the world. It's got a top 30 GDP. But for the average Iranian, the reality is completely different. Their GDP per capita, which is what people actually feel in their wallets, is lower than in countries like Namibia or Bolivia. And the number one reason for that? Decades of crippling international sanctions.
And here's the kicker. This economic pain is a direct result of the regime's own decisions. The main one being its relentless push for a nuclear program. Now, Iran has always insisted it's just for peaceful energy purposes, but the rest of the world hasn't been so sure. And the international response has been to isolate Iran economically. At the end of the day, it's the ordinary people of Iran who are paying the price for that choice.
And lately, wow, we've seen this whole strategy get tested at breathtaking speed. It's been like a series of cascading crises, one after another, all challenging Khamenei's doctrine. You had Hamas crippled after its attack, Hezbollah getting hammered by strikes in Lebanon, the Houthis getting bombed by a US-led coalition. And then, for the first time ever, Iran and Israel started launching missiles directly at each other, which really exposed the limits of Iran's conventional military power.
So here we are. After more than 30 years, the reign of the unlikely successor is facing its biggest test yet, from the outside and from within. The Ayatollah is an old man. He won't be around forever. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. What comes next? Will his successors just double down on the same path of confrontation? Or will the people of Iran finally get the chance to write a new chapter for themselves? That's the question.